All right, folks, just swirling up batch brew because it's time for another episode of Mirror Coffee Roasters warm-up sessions.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Experimental. I mean,
Whew.
I don't know if this is any good, but probably
Kinda.
not.
But on the aromas, I smell a natural. No?
Whoa, it reminded me of our Yirgacheffe from back in the day. It's cooled down a lot because I think we've been prepping, setting up for the podcast. It's been sitting there for about 30 minutes in the glass carafe and not thermal. So it's a nice temp already. Kind of that mint is what reminded me of the Yirgacheffe, at least in the first sip. In this one, no, I'm getting more maybe ginger. It's a little lackluster.
Yeah. It's not bad. Actually, I think it has a lot of flavor. It's just not... Maybe that's a extraction thing, but it feels kind of... I don't think bland is the word, but it doesn't feel deep.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have much depth to
muted.
it. Yeah, it feels like the whole thing is muted, but there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but it's all muted.
Lack of clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I threw in one of our roasts that we didn't like how it cupped. I think a roast that we tossed because we didn't like the cupping. So, I thought I'd experiment with it. I think maybe.
Would you blend together? Or what origins?
2 Ethiopias. One of them being a bad roast.
The natural for sure. I can taste.
Yeah, the natural is definitely.
The natural comes through. I don't know if we talked about this ever, but Scott Rayo said something really interesting. This is going to be so controversial. He said naturals are underrated for being good blenders.
But I think almost every blend I've had a little bit of a natural.
Yeah.
I mean, recently.
Yeah.
Of course, I've had blends that back in the day when you had a 10 bean blend or a 10, you know what I mean?
God.
10 roast blend. It's just like,
God.
I don't know how you measure that out. 10% of everything you have in a roastery, like just toss it in.
Just the bean from every origin.
No, extraction is nailed. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, the natural really cuts through. I think there's a slight paperiness to it, which might be from that bad roast. Yeah. But that being said...
there's also that lack of sweetness. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah,
It's
great.
Yeah.
Just not super impressive.
Yeah. Which
sure.
I think like after you drink enough specialty coffee, you forget how far...
Yeah.
Like... You just forget oftentimes like that you're actually drinking like really amazing coffees.
Yeah.
Like go down to your local like, I don't know, gas station or
gas station.
Get it some AM PM batch and give that a try. And then you'll be like, okay, the worst coffee I've had this year is better than that.
Yeah. I mean, I used to purge specialty out of me by going to a rest area and going through the automated E7 dark roast or E7 medium roast.
Yeah.
And drink some of that.
I remember the days. Washington is one of the only states in the country that has free coffee and snacks at rest areas.
Cookies.
Yeah. But of course they ask for like a donation that you can toss in. Most people will, but that's probably, I think it's like something like they're like, well, we're like one of the only states that's allowed, and you can maybe stop by.
That seems too friendly for Washington. I don't know. Come on. We're not in Tennessee or Alabama where that should be the norm.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. What are we talking about today?
Dude, a lot of good stuff. Side note, I wanted
Dude,
to
how'd
highlight...
you down a couple already?
I don't know, dude. It's pretty tasty. It had this black tea and floral thing coming through that I really enjoy. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I can't let up. Actually, I'm tasting the Gucci pretty vibrantly in here. Is this a solid 50-50?
Yeah. It was exactly 50-50, 25, 26-26.
You can taste it.
Yeah.
Both coffees are punching through like pretty equally.
I would say the Gucci's overpowering, but
Yeah.
yeah. And unfortunately, it was a bad roast of the Gucci, so that's why I'm like, it started a little bit with that hint of like a very, very nice kind of spearmint that reminded me of the Yirgacheffe. But I think that's where the ginger kind of came through, the lack of sweetness, because that was the roast that we tossed.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to throw out, I'm finishing up merch right now. And I'm not going to say anything else except for, do we go with black on white or white on black? If you had to do one or the other.
Me?
Yeah.
Man, I definitely probably lean more like white on black.
Yeah, like a black t-shirt with a white whatever
design.
Yeah.
One thing, like, I love white stuff. I really do. And like light colored stuff like this shirt, if you're watching this on YouTube, I like it, but I can't. I'm just not that like, I'm clean. Yeah. I'm definitely cleaner than most people, but I just, having a stain ruins my entire day. If I just get something on my t-shirt that I know is not coming off, it's gonna ruin my day, and that has to happen on a white shirt or on like a light colored shirt. Yeah, so that's why I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna resort to all black, and most of my wardrobe is like all negatives and neutral colors on the darker side. So
like this is like, the sweatshirt I'm wearing right now has white embroidery.
Yeah.
Fairly white, or is that silver? That's white.
No, it's white.
Yeah, white embroidery on black. Yeah. That's kind of what I was leaning towards too. The other thing that came to my mind is we need to find someone, and folks, if you're listening and you know of someone who does this, holler at us, because we need to find someone who can help us make a shirt. Like, the shirt I wear to roast, that double pocketed button-up shirt. It looks like a workwear shirt. Borderline like Dickies or Carhartt, but it's cleaner.
Yeah.
I need something like that to customize. Like, that would be super dope to have like something on both pockets, and it actually says something across, but half a word here and half a word there.
Actually, yeah. Have you seen April Coffee's apparel merch line?
No, I haven't.
It's very similar.
Oh, really?
But it's like more heavy workwear.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out of Europe, so they have kind of like that. Like, there's some inspiration there. It's a very interesting, like a merch line. Yeah. Very interesting. Probably not something I would buy. Yeah. Because theirs is like very different. But it's like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So
I'm definitely not like, I love merch, but I'm more or less leaning towards like almost like a clothing line rather than merch. You know what I mean?
For
like,
sure.
if we could one day like hit up like Stutterheim and make like custom Stutterheim rain jackets. You know who I'm talking about?
I don't.
The European.
But I do know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, but I do.
Yeah, I think I'm saying it right. Maybe I'm saying it wrong like I normally do.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, cool. Cool.
That kind of rolls into like, man, sometimes starting new things, like for us, that's like dropping some merch, clothing, or, man, the coffees that are coming in the next 3 weeks from us are definitely something that are very different than anything we've done so far. I mean, being 2 years into Mir, and when you do something new and something different, whether that's you're just like taking on like a new fun hobby, a skill, you're trying to learn piano or whatever, or something intense like, well, you're starting a business from scratch. One thing is like, at least for me, I'm always like, I look at, man, this is where I am. I have nothing. I don't know where to start. I'm not very skillful in this. And then I'm seeing all the people that are super great at it. And I'm like, man, that's going to take forever. And that has so many things attached to it. And it almost becomes intimidating to take that to take that initial first step. However, also now I'm like, man, it was kind of intimidating starting Mir with so much uncertainty and all the things that we had to kind of work around. But now I'm like, oh, dude, we're like coming up on 2 years. And yeah, that's not that long for sure. But also it is long in the sense of like, it feels like we just started yesterday. Like it just feels like these last 2 years just went by so fast.
Yeah, it's a classic of like, man, you know, when will I be ready to like have kids? Well, never. Yeah. Like, let's be real. Like, you know what I mean? You're never ready because something unforeseen is going to come through. But it's more or less like not worrying about having all your ducks in a row, but actually like preparing just to kind of roll with the punches and be prepared for like whatever comes your way that's going to be difficult. Like, don't like be ignorant of that, but also don't allow that to like control you going and pursuing something like you're passionate about. And I think like, I mean, a few examples that come to me is obviously like photography, like that was a big one. Like there's so many times, like even when I lost my camera because I was on a trip and went through a flood and it got damaged.
I remember that.
I think it was my Canon 40 or 60D. And I was so afraid to buy a new camera because I was like, man, I'll never get like a gig. Like, what if I invest like $2 or $3 grand into my 5D Mark IV? I was like, man, if I invest into that,
I remember that.
How will I ever pay it off? And you and I talked about that a lot. I was basically like done with photography at that point. I was like, you know, I'll like dink around on my like Canon AE1 or something. But then the funny thing is when I finally, like you and I, like we convinced me to actually like go and do it. Like all of a sudden, like I got the camera and gigs started showing up. You know what I mean? I got the camera and I was almost like forced to take a step forward and like, whether that's like bring it to work, like when I was working at Sippers and shoot some photos, or go to like a latte art throwdown. Like that was a weird thing. Like I'd go to latte art throwdowns,
I remember
wouldn't compete because I was afraid. But like my comfort zone and like my place where I could hide was behind the lens. So I'd like snap photos, and then all of a sudden people like all of the famous Jacksonville baristas would be like hitting me up like, hey man, can I get that shot of me? Like, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden folks are like, oh, can you come to this event and shoot? Oh, and then, you know what I mean? But that first initial step was like, dude, like I'm going to make this dumb investment and like, is it really worth it?
Yeah. And there's definitely like, not to say that, you know, anything you throw money at and go blindly at is going to work somehow magically, but not letting like the intimidation factor hinder like a genuine interest or a hobby or, and it doesn't have to be something even like money related. Something that like, man, I've just been thinking about is I want to find something that that is not money related at all, that I can be really passionate like into. Like one of those things for me, potentially low key, is like a little bit of music. I just don't do it enough. I do it occasionally. Or like getting into like playing soccer with, you know, the guys in town here. Or, you know, like whether that's hiking or, you know, something like that, where it's like, it doesn't always have to be like a monetary thing that you're trying to make, but don't let the intimidation factor keep you from starting that rock climbing hobby with, you know, that like rock climbing community that you have in town. Even though you could be like, I want to rock climb, but I don't even know what those funny shoes they wear look like, or, you know, like, I don't even know if I have the body strength for that, where really, you know, it's like, oftentimes it's like when you get over that intimidation factor and you take those couple steps that are uncomfortable, that are humbling, sometimes humiliating, oftentimes there's like such a really awesome learning experience, whether you gain new friends, a new fresh community, or maybe it becomes a career and you're like, whoa, I never thought that I could get paid for something like this. And then one thing leads to another. And that was similar, like how what happened with like some of my video stuff, where it's like, never did I think that it would become something that I could live off of and get paid for. And then one thing led to another, and it kind of just happen, and I'm like, okay, there's something here that I could consider. And so, yeah, I think that oftentimes it's the intimidation that keeps us from pursuing these cool things.
Yeah, and I would say the intimidation factor really comes, like, especially for me, and I know probably you too, is like overthinking things.
Oh,
you get stuck in your mind, and you're trying to like play out every worst case scenario, and which most likely won't happen. But you know, it's like all of that, like kind of like stress behind the fear of failure. But I think a lot of that has to do with like really ego and like, you know what I mean? Killing your ego and a little dose of humility actually like opens up this door to life, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, like you're saying, like you're out with that rock climbing community, you know, a couple of times you look like a fool. Yeah. That's fine. You don't have to be the best at everything. That's hard for me to admit. Like, you know what I mean? I'm competitive. Of course. I'm going to go play soccer. I don't want to like be the idiot on the field. Like, you know what I mean? If I'm out playing basketball, I don't want to be the guy who like, you know, can't get a rebound or, you know, whatever. It's like, you don't want to, but if you humble yourself, like kill that ego, then you realize that what you're enjoying is actually like pure relationship. Yeah. And like at the end of the day, no matter what, that is the goal. Like pure relationship is the purpose. Like it's so general, but that's it. That's why we run businesses like Mirror. That's why we pursue like storytelling through photography and videography. Like that's why we do things. It's about pure relationships. And when you kind of reframe it, then like being humbled or like killing your ego is actually so much bigger and so much more than just maybe like a little bit of that like humbling pain you have to experience in the meantime.
Of course. Yeah. That's awesome. And most of the time, like, not to say this for everything, but really, you know, making those first steps, it's essential to do it around people or learn from people, whether that's virtually, you know, you're watching YouTube videos, or, you know, you join like a Facebook group or some kind of community, or you go and you start building relationships with people in these places. You know, for me, like growing in my coffee knowledge was like, there was a cafe in Bellingham that only served black coffee, only pour overs, no sugar, no cream, no nothing. It was in low key, almost like a basement under some apartments. And I would go in there and they were open one day a week. It was on Saturday. And for me, learning was like going there and looking like an absolute fool or like an absolute pelican, and just building those relationships with the barista who knew way more than me, and just asking questions. And oftentimes, you know, these hobbies or these things that we're about to pursue, we can't grow without other people. Yeah, we just cannot. That's like, once again, whether that's a virtual or in person, we just cannot. And oftentimes, like, there will be jerks. There will be people who are going to make fun of you or maybe laugh at you or put you down for being a beginner. But most of the time, you will be able to find somebody who's like, of course I want to help. Of course I want to, because I've been there. We've actually all been there. Right. You know, starting something that's feels way bigger than ourselves. Yeah.
And I think within that idea of learning and like education, I think what fuels that is passion. Like I was listening to our brother-in-law talk to our dad about like the strangest things, like, and I'm like, dude, Nathan, how do you know all this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, and Nathan is a classic Enneagram 5 where he's like Enneagram 5 where you want to research stuff, you want to get to know stuff, but like they were talking about like wireless car starters. Like, and I'm like, dude, like Nathan is getting deep, like different wiring kits, like all that. And I'm like thinking about that. I'm like, why does he know that? Well, no one told him to go research like, you know, wireless things. It's because he was passionate about it. And I heard him tell dad, like, man, like I just don't want Rachel to have to worry about like warming up the car before she heads out early. She should be able to get into a warm car. So it's like that passion to kind of find a solution for something fuels learning. Yeah. And I think like one of those things within that, like when I was learning to skateboard and I was going out to the Lakeway next to the Sportsplex, that old skate park back. I don't know if it exists anymore. I haven't been there.
Yeah, man.
But that's where I used to go. Like, I could care less what people thought about me because I was passionate about skateboarding. Like, I remember going out in my Abercrombie outfit, like the polo and the jeans.
Heck yeah.
And I think I don't know if maybe I had a pair of Etnies. I don't know. But like, it wasn't cool. Like, you know what I mean? I wasn't wearing the classic like skate attire that all the cool kids were wearing. But at that point, I just didn't care. And because I didn't care, I didn't feel the need to compare. And I was sending it, you know what I mean? Trying to grind them rails, man. Rails.
Little 50-50
board slide,
tail,
50-50.
tail,
Let's go.
Tail
Pop,
grind.
shove it out. Let's go. I wasn't good at kick flips. Never was. Frustrating, but
nollie.
Dude, board slide was my thing. Like, dude, I remember when we had that ramp on our driveway, dude, and I like freaking sent it on my pro Jamie Thomas zero board and landed and cracked the board in half. I was so devastated, but I couldn't afford those like classic Element Bam Margera or girl skateboards.
Girls in the
I finally got one later, but had to break a couple Jamie Thomas used zero skateboards.
But man, that's very true. For me, I mean, in reality, for me, that's like going to the gym. Like, I have thought about it multiple times. The reason why I haven't gone is because I feel like a pelican. I feel dumb going in there, and I know I'm gonna be like benching the bar. I like, that's the reality of it. Dude. But I'll for days, you know, go work on my cardio. I'll go run around like on Everson Goshen Road, freaking out in the county. You know, I'll go run because, well, there's a couple cars driving. They know nothing about my health, and I look fairly like I don't look badly out of shape, but I am horribly out of shape. But I'll never step into a gym because I'm like, I can't. I'm just intimidated, but I want to. But I'm just intimidated because a lot of that is that like I care what people are going to think about me. I care about that. There's so much comparison. There's actually killing a lot of those things. What do you think for you that's been like, what have you taken on in coffee that has been super intimidating at face value that you've had to take on?
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't know if my present employer, Maxwell Mooney, is going to be listening to this, but like the squad I get to work with right now, it's intimidating. Like I'm struggling pulling shots, like because I'm so intimidated. You know what I mean? Like I can't tamp. Like I can't like. I literally went through half a gallon of milk because I couldn't pour anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like the basics. Like I'm just like, I feel like I'm restarting. And like, there's definitely days where I'm like not even wanting to work in coffee. I'm like, maybe I'll just be the narrative like painter. Well, I'll just repaint their walls. So like, I think from that element, I'm like going back to the beginning where coffee is intimidating all of a sudden. And I think it also comes from this place of like, I respect the community I'm in. Like I respect the folks I work with a lot. And then I also look up to these folks. And I think that happens in coffee all the time. Like if you're just getting into specialty coffee, it most likely is because you saw a friend or someone experience coffee and talk nerdy about it maybe, or talk about it in a way that was like kind of jarring and new to you. So you got inspired and you're like, man, I want to do this. So you have this respect and awe for this community. And it's always hard to make that first step. It always is. Like I feel like I'm making that first step all over again, working on this new team. But at the end of the day, like you won't go anywhere if you don't make the first step. So you have to like face that fear in the moment to be like, man, I'm intimidated pouring latte art in front of Alex, a freaking legend, but I'm gonna have to pour if we're working on bar together. I'm not gonna not pour a drink. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna do it. I was super intimidated, like pulling shots with Sam Spillman and Max. But I'm gonna have to pull a shot. Like I can't run from that. You know what I mean? So taking that first step and actually being like, okay, what do I know? And then I remember, like I told you about this, like last week, I literally came up to Max and said, dude, all of my shots are channeling. Why? dude, that was scary to approach him and say that, like the basics. Like, do I not know how to tamp? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to do that and be like, dude, I feel like I'm in kindergarten again.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to take, swallow the humble pill and learn. Yeah. But that's like, once you do that, like once you get over that step, like once you go and join that group of friends and go to that cafe and maybe drink a black cup of coffee and a pour over and just nod, I taste that. Yeah, totally. That's stone fruit. Yeah,
I've done that before.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, dude, acidity's great. Yeah. Like once you get past that, like, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You'll do it next time. You know what I mean? With less. And then maybe you'll do it on your own and be like, what am I tasting? You know what I mean? Or what am I doing in this pour over? Like, why did it make a difference?
Of course. Yeah. Oftentimes it's those moments of discomfort that actually lead to not just growth in your skill, but deeper relationships once again. Like a strong community, a vulnerable community, and a community that is willing to come alongside you where you're not great at. And then that gives you room to come alongside them where they're maybe not great at something that you're actually better at.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. Like at the end of the day, that makes, whether that's the coffee community or whatever thing that you're out to do, so wonderful and such a pleasure and so enjoyable. So
totally. It's the way. It's the way to that life, man.
Yeah.
To that real life.
There it is, folks. You've heard it said. Yeah. Well, thanks to you so much for listening or watching to this episode of the Coffee Roasters warm-up sessions. Stay on the lookout for a new coffee, which should have dropped today, which will be dropping today, and for a lot of fun coffees coming up and some really interesting things dropping that might be of interest to you or to a loved one. So stay tuned for that. But once again, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers, y'all.